Ruff appeared also in a lecture because Harry wanted to make sure that the students knew that Willie Ruff is different from Oscar Ruff of the Ruff degradation. So in order to do that, Willie came to join Harry, and they demonstrated that they did something different than the Ruff degradation. Willie.
When I arrived at Yale as a freshman at Yale School of Music in 1949, it was a very different place than it is today. And I had come there because of one musician. I never knew Yale had any distinction for music, but I happened to read, I was still in the Air Force, I happened to read in a jazz magazine an interview with the great high priest of modern jazz, Charlie Parker. And this interviewer said, "Bird, if you could do with the next several years whatever you'd like, what would that be? Go off and invent a more perfect bebop?" And Charlie Parker said, "No, I know exactly what I would do. There is this German kid. His name is Paul Hindemith. He's teaching composition at Yale, and I would go there and sit at his feet and learn me some music because I like everything I've heard of his that played, and I've liked everything I have read of his." I'd never heard of Paul Hindemith. I was just about to get discharged from a group out in Ohio where the Tuskegee Airmen was stationed, and I was in band there, and a fanatic about jazz, and anything Charlie Parker wanted to do was good enough for me. So I wrote away for a catalog, and I got in the return mail and an invitation to come for an audition, and by some miracle they let me in. And what I found here was a Paul Hindemith obsessed with the life of Johannes Kepler, about which he was writing his longest opera. And in Kepler's time, you will all realize that the form of education for a learned person was the quadrivium: astronomy, mathematics, geometry, and what? Music! So I found this, in learning this from Hindemith, that Yale wasn't set up that way. The music and the liberal arts were down the hill, and this was called Science Hill up here. But there were two cats that I encountered on the Yale faculty from up on this hill who were thoroughly steeped in music. One was the Silliman professor of geology, John Rogers, who was a Hindemith freak. He wanted to play everything, play his way through that, and so did I. So we ended up playing a lot of concerts together and all. And I left, there was this other cat up here on your hill, and his name was Harry. And he took care of the jazz end of it. He didn't care much, or if he did, I never heard him play Hindemith or any of that. Harry liked to get down, down into the blues and dirty. And I left here after graduating and began teaching, and was invited back in 1971. And when I arrived, I found Harry still getting down. And there was John Rogers still there in the Department of Geology, and one of the world's great stratigraphers. And I said to Rogers, "John, you know, since I left and since Hindemith died, and 300 and something years after Kepler's time, there is the possibility now, although we don't have the instrumentation here at Yale to do it, but it's possible to prove Kepler's 3 laws of planetary motion. We didn't have an electronic music department at that time." So John said, yes, I understand. Let's, we were both resident fellows in Branford College, and over many meals on the back of napkins with the participation of undergraduates, we worked out, and mostly John, because I'm not the mathematician that one needs to be to do all of that, but John Rogers was. And suddenly, well, not quite so suddenly, but after some work, Bell Labs agreed to let us into their facility down in New Jersey, and we got a recording, actually a planetarium for the ear of Kepler's date of 1619, written in Latin so everybody could understand it. And the report of this came back. I brought this stuff on a tape home and listened to it and went crazy. And a reporter came up from the New York Times, who had been a Branford student, watching us work this stuff out in the dining hall there, and wrote an article about it, which ended up on the front page of the Tuesday Science section. Next day, I get this telephone call from California, Jet Propulsion Lab. Professor Ruff, yes, sir. This is Carl Sagan. We're calling to see if you and Professor Rogers would give permission to include your Kepler work on a spacecraft called Voyager we're about to send out. They're making this famous golden recording, and we agreed to do that. And it is out there, leaving the influence of the solar system. And thank you, Charlie Parker. Thank you, Hindemith. And thanks for the ride, Harry.